Republican Party do? Because they've completely succumbed to him. The Republican Party is the Trump Party. Who even begins to think about a future for the Republican Party when they've been, well, certainly his current cabinet have been, cheek by jowl with him?
Well, I think they're going to regret that. I think they're tainted by that. I think foreign leaders who said, I'm going to rub it with Trump and I'm going to be all Trumpy. And then there's going to be a new administration in Washington and they're going to go, oh.
But haven't they all been doing that?
Well, a lot of them have been doing it, but I'm just saying, I just think the chickens are going to come home to roost for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
The Republican Party and the people who supported Trump and the people that looked the other way, people that participated in the corruption, all these people.
Well, Steve Bannon came out and said that they needed to, what was his expression? Burn daylight, because otherwise he was worried they would all go to jail, including himself.
What kind of drugs is he taking now? What is?
Why do you
seriously,
want some?
what is this burn daylight? The fact that he's still alive. Have you ever seen somebody who sweats more, looks more out of shape, looks dirtier at any given moment?
I haven't spent a lot of time.
Except for Stephen Chung, by the way.
Well, Stephen Chung is now on the fat drugs, as Trump calls them.
Oh, is he?
Yes,
Is that why we have to finally get the reduction in the price of the fat drugs?
Michael Wolff was making the point that the reason Stephen Chung never made it to be White House press spokesperson was that Trump doesn't respond to the fact that he's obese.
No, he doesn't. Trump, he only wants to hire attractive, young blonde women, and then Pete Hegseth, who's the equivalent, right? And
American Doll.
But Jabba the Hutt, is the White House communications director, and
right.
Didn't
he single you out recently?
Well, you said that, but I didn't actually get the backstory.
Well, he said you are less than nobody.
Less than nobody. Well, that's true.
Nobody.
That's what my family thinks.
Okay.
But fuck him. But the reality is,
yes,
that they all have a reckoning coming. And I think they will try their best to cheat their way out of this next election because they know that if the Democrats win the House, it's over. Trump is over. He will be 80. He will not have a future in the party. He will not get anything passed in the government ever again. And there will be an investigation into everything, into the Qatari airplane, into the repaving the Rose Garden, into the ballroom, into every deal that the Trump family has made.
So if you're a business and you've made a donation to the ballroom, and we know that lots of businesses have, from Apple to Google to Amazon, what are you thinking now, given the strength of the reaction on Tuesday? Somebody,
I hope, if you're a good business and you've got some kind of diversity of people left in your business, is saying to you, folks, this particular chapter in American history is going to come to an end, and we've got to be prepared that it may not only go another way, but that the retributive, nasty, greedy Trump attitude is going to have burned some people. And if we're seen as being too close to them, we're going to pay a price.
So are you going to see a pulling back, do you think? Are you going to see less fawning in public?
Typically, you may see less fawning in public. Typically, Wall Street has always played this game the same way because they want to be in control. And frankly, they are in control. But the way is they give to both. They have a group of people who give to one party, a group of people who give to another party.
But Trump has demanded something extra of the big CEOs, right? Which is they gather around him, the cameras come in, which is unheard of. Normally these dinners are held in private, and then they are expected to fawn. We saw it with Tim Cook, we saw it with Bill Gates. We know that Bill Gates doesn't like Trump, but he was, thank you so much for gathering us here together.
Well, they're all, you think Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, likes Trump? No, he doesn't like Trump. These European leaders who go in there, I think Keir Starmer.
No, of course, they're doing it because they know they have to do it.
They just think this works, with this guy. But I also think another thing's going to happen this year. The foreign leader that's going to get the most traction with Trump is the one that stood up to him, and that's Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping said, no, we got cards to play. You want to play hardball with us? We'll play hardball with you. And Trump will work harder to get a deal done with him than with anybody else. Because Trump, he's like, the dog at the dog park, and he's looking for the alpha dog. And he knows he's not the alpha dog. And so he's like sniffing everybody's butt. And he is coming to the conclusion that the butt that needs to be kissed after it's sniffed is Xi Jinping. That's political analysis, by the way.
Okay, so,
I just want you to know this is high quality
that's
Washington.
Just technical.
Yeah,
Is right.
I've taught foreign policy at Columbia University for 20 years.
This is your Columbia background now, giving us the technical terms.
Yeah.
And what does that look like in terms of tariffs?
Well, the tariff thing is a complicated thing, and that's another thing that happened this week. The Supreme Court did these hearings on the tariffs, and it looked like that 5, 6, or even 7 members of the court were skeptical.
Right, and they were calling them import taxes.
Well, no, the Chief Justice was the one who said this is a tax,
yep.
Which totally, drives Trump crazy, although it's a tax, right? But Justice Barrett had her reasons for saying this law doesn't apply, and Justice Gorsuch had his constitutional concerns. Well, if all of those people fall in line and they rein in Trump a little bit, this would create a kind of a big question. Like, well, if these aren't legal, how do you do the refunds? And that's super complicated. But the White House has already indicated that if that happens, they're then going to try and do it a different way. And the reason is Trump really, in his heart, believes that tariffs create revenue for the United States from someplace else.
Right. That he doesn't understand that the American people are paying them. It's an import tax on us.
Right. And
things are more expensive.
Even his representative in the Supreme Court case, the Solicitor General, Sauer, said, well, the studies we use show that 30 to 80% are paid by Americans, right? Well, the 30% study, that's baloney. Right. The point is that 2/3 or 80% or whatever paid by Americans, and the rest are paid by U.S. corporations that are passing it on in some kind of other way. So we're the ones suffering from these things.
Why doesn't Trump understand that? Why is he so dug in over tariffs?
There are issues where Trump feels that anybody who offers a counter opinion is anti-Trump, and that therefore he can't embrace. And notice people. Right. I remember talking to people. One of the books I wrote on sort of how Trump foreign policy worked, and John Bolton and Fiona Hill and all these people who were Vindman who were working in the White House, they learned they can't bring up Russia, because he thinks anybody who brings up Russia is bringing up Russia, and is accusing him of something.
Right.
And so they just laid off the issue. And I think that's part of the issue that's going on. He's got a bunch of, first of all, he got rid of anybody who would, give her a counter opinion. He surrounded himself with sycophants.
Well, and surrounded himself with people who have no political history themselves, right? Haven't worked in politics, apart from Marco Rubio, maybe.
Yeah.
But I mean, Pam
he
at the DOJ.
Marco Rubio had his spine surgically removed, apparently, because, he was once anti-Trump, and now he's like whatever he says.
Well, and J.D. Vance once called him the new Hitler, and here he is snuggled up to him.
Well, J.D. Vance, someday, there'll be books, and this will be like, what do you call somebody who's got no character? And then you say, oh, J.D. Vance.
So J.D. Vance will become like a hillbilly.
Well, yeah, yeah, that's a nice analogy. But yes, there's this group of people though who are not correcting him. There's another group, Stephen Miller, Peter Navarro and so forth, that are egging him on and saying, oh yeah, lay those tariffs on there, buddy. That's great. This is strong. This is you're winning. And they went, even in the Supreme Court, they said this will produce $4 trillion in revenue. Not realizing, of course, that the Chief Justice will then say, well, so this is a revenue creation, which is supposed to be left to the Congress, right? But, this is one of those issues where he won't take no for an answer, and so he's stuck.
All right. So one of the things we know Trump is really good at doing is changing the conversation. We've had, I think it's now up to 70 people killed in the Caribbean, right, and occasionally in the Pacific, right. And you mentioned before we started talking, there is an aircraft carrier on its way, or it's left the Mediterranean, and as far as we know, it's headed to the Caribbean.
Yeah, the Gerald R. Ford nuclear aircraft carrier left the Mediterranean a couple of days ago, and today, tomorrow, the next day is going to be off the coast of Venezuela. In fact, something like a seventh of the U.S. Navy's assets are going to be in the Caribbean and poised to do something off of Venezuela. Now, before we go further, I would like to remind you that we're not actually at war with Venezuela. Venezuela does not actually pose a threat to the United States.
Right. What could the possible reason be? He says drugs, but actually the drug issue at the moment is fentanyl. They are producing cocaine.
But they don't, first of all, they don't produce many drugs, right? They are way down the list in terms of that kind of thing. Secondly, the boats they're blowing up can't even make it to the United States.
Right. They don't have enough fuel on board.
Right. And,
so where are they going?
Well, who knows? But, thirdly, if they wanted to, they could stop the boat, go to the people, say, "Hi, we're a destroyer. You don't want to, major U.S. Ship," and say, "Stop," and we're going to go on board, and we're going to take your picture, and we're going to take a picture of the drugs, and we're going to find out who you were. But they don't do that.
Is it more effective as a deterrent just to blow them up?
Well, of course. I mean, sure, it's a deterrent. I mean, if you shot every third person who walked into your apartment building, fewer people are going to go to your apartment building. But but I think that's they say it's a deterrent. Stephen Miller, who's like a vampire. I don't know if you've watched the depiction of him on South Park, but it's pretty good. Mm-hmm. Stephen Miller's like, yeah, this will really show those weaklings who picked on me in the lunchroom, or whatever has motivated him to do this. But I don't know what the real motivation is. There's a lot of oil in Venezuela. Maybe he thinks he can, put in somebody and then they'll do one of these weird deals where they give us some of the oil. Or maybe he's got some friend who thinks I can make some money off of this in some way. But for sure, it has nothing to do with U.S. national security.
Right.
For sure. And that's why Trump is a little bit worried about some of the options he's being given. He's been presented with several options what to do in Venezuela, because if he sends troops into Venezuela and somebody actually gets killed, then he's really going to have to justify it.
Well, and also he's now starting to do things which the MAGA base don't want him to do. We talked about Marjorie Taylor Greene, but we know that they are America first. They don't want money going abroad. I don't know how they've managed to square the circle, sending $40 billion to Argentina.
Well, they can't square the circle. And so, for the first 8 months of this year, 7 months, there was no dissent. Now, there's a little Marjorie Taylor Greene dissent. Then Trump says, we need the nuclear option in the Senate. We need to get rid of the filibuster. And John Thune, who's definitely a go-along, get-along guy, says, nope, we're not doing that. And on tariffs, you saw resolutions in the Senate in the past couple of weeks blocking the tariffs on Brazil, blocking the tariffs on some of these countries as being wrong. So there's some people standing out on that. Clearly, there's some people who are off the reservation on Epstein and wanting to get those files.
Thomas Massey, right. And the three women, Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And then you've got someone like Vivek Ramaswamy, who's running for Ohio governor, saying we need to worry less about what's going on abroad and focus on affordability at home.
Right. Well, but that's the point, is, you're going to have all this.
So he's going to get
little cracks.
He's going to get resistance from his own team,
right? And that's part of what I meant when I said he's staring death in the face. His political mortality is right around the corner, and there is going to come a moment, and I don't know when that moment is, but there is going to come a moment where the majority of people in the Republican Party say he's a lame duck. Who's next? So and this is going to be devastating, because what Trump cares about more than anything else, even more than money, is being relevant. And it's going to be and he's going to make this desperate play to say, no, I'm still relevant. Right? Do your stories on me still. And you remember Joe Biden? Right? No, nobody remembers Joe Biden. Joe Biden was president earlier this year.
Right. Well, that's incredible to think of it like that. So does this mean that Trump is going to be forced into saying he's running for a third term and enjoy all the Sturm und Drang around that?
I think he's going to have people saying it. He says he's going to do it. Then he says he's not going to do it. Then he says people say I should do it. And then the longer it's hanging out there, it's just a desperate attempt to cling to relevance. It's the policy equivalent of a trophy wife. It makes him feel younger.